Forever Skies dropped in early access back in 2023, and here we are in 2026, still talking about it. That should tell you something right there. This is a game that promised us a post-apocalyptic Earth, where humanity fled to orbit, and now we're coming back down to scavenge what's left. The twist: everything worth finding is floating thousands of feet above the poisoned surface in a toxic dust layer. You're piloting an airship through the ruins of skyscrapers, poking through the clouds, and honestly, the first time you see that concept in action, it hits different. Let me paint the picture of what this game actually is. You wake up on your airship with basically nothing. No weapons, no resources, barely any fuel. The game throws you into this vertical world where you need to explore derelict buildings suspended in the dust, scavenge for materials, research new technologies, and slowly upgrade your flying base into something that can actually survive. It's part survival game, part base building, part exploration, and the blend works way better than it has any right to. The core loop is addictive in that classic survival game way. You fly around looking for buildings to explore, land your airship on rooftops or anchor it nearby, then jump out and search through the ruins. You're collecting everything from basic scrap metal to advanced tech components, seeds for your onboard garden, and research samples that let you unlock new blueprints. Then you head back to your airship, craft what you need, expand your base, and push further into more dangerous areas. Simple concept, but the execution is where Forever Skies separates itself from the crowd. What makes the exploration so engaging is the environmental storytelling. These aren't just random buildings filled with loot. Each location tells a story about what happened before the collapse. You find abandoned research facilities, luxury apartments frozen in time, corporate offices with terminals still displaying final messages. The game never holds your hand with exposition dumps. You piece together what happened to Earth through environmental clues, scattered logs, and your own observations. There's something genuinely eerie about walking through a penthouse apartment at cloud level, seeing family photos on the walls, then finding a dust-covered skeleton in the bedroom. The game earns its atmosphere. The airship customization is where things get really interesting. Your ship starts as this tiny platform with a few basic stations, but by mid-game you're building multi-level flying bases with gardens, research labs, storage systems, scanning equipment, and defensive measures. The building system is intuitive and satisfying. Everything snaps together logically, but you still have creative freedom in how you design your layout. I spent way too many hours just reorganizing my ship to maximize efficiency. The fact that your base is mobile adds this whole extra layer, because you're not just building for aesthetics. You need to consider weight distribution, power consumption, and how your layout affects your ability to navigate through tight spaces between buildings. Combat exists, but it's not the focus, and that's actually refreshing. You'll encounter mutated creatures and environmental hazards, but Forever Skies is more about survival and exploration than fighting. When combat happens, it's usually because you ventured somewhere dangerous or weren't careful enough. The tension comes from resource management and environmental threats rather than enemy encounters. Your oxygen levels, hunger, thirst, radiation exposure, and various diseases all matter. The survival mechanics feel meaningful without being tedious, which is a hard balance to nail. The crafting and research systems deserve credit for actually making sense. You scan objects and samples to unlock new blueprints, then craft items using resources you've gathered. Nothing feels arbitrary. If you need to build a water purifier, you need actual components that logically would make a water purifier. The progression curve is well-paced too. You're constantly unlocking new capabilities that open up previously inaccessible areas, but it never feels like artificial gating. You genuinely need the equipment you're researching to survive deeper exploration. Now, let's talk about how this game looks in 2026. Visually, Forever Skies still holds up surprisingly well. The art direction was always the strong point, rather than raw graphical fidelity. That dust layer aesthetic with ruined buildings emerging from toxic clouds creates this unique visual identity that still looks distinctive today. Sure, we've seen sharper textures and better lighting in games released since then, but the atmosphere here remains compelling. The way light filters through the dust, the draw distance showing endless ruins stretching to the horizon, the interior design of abandoned locations, it all still works. The developers made smart artistic choices that aged well rather than chasing cutting-edge graphics that would look dated in a few years. Performance-wise, the game runs significantly better now than at early access launch. The optimization has improved dramatically through updates. Back in 2023, some players dealt with stuttering and frame drops. Playing it in 2026, especially on current hardware, it's smooth as butter. Load times are minimal, pop-in is barely noticeable, and the game handles complex airship builds without performance issues. The technical foundation is solid. Sound design deserves mention because it contributes so much to the atmosphere. The ambient sounds of wind howling through ruins, the creaking of your airship, the unsettling noises echoing through abandoned buildings, all of it creates this constant low-level tension.
The music is minimal and atmospheric, kicking in at the right moments without overwhelming the environmental audio. Voice acting is limited since you're mostly alone, but the few voice logs you find are well performed and add to the narrative without feeling forced. Here's where Forever Skies gets really interesting from a 2026 perspective. The game influenced a whole wave of vertical survival games that came after it. Suddenly, everyone wanted to do the floating ruins aesthetic or the mobile base concept, but most of those imitators missed what made this game work. Forever Skies succeeds because it commits fully to its concept and executes the fundamentals well. It's not trying to be everything to everyone. It knows exactly what experience it wants to deliver, and delivers that experience consistently. The replay value is decent, but not infinite. Once you've explored most locations and maxed out your airship, the motivation to continue drops off. The game could benefit from more endgame content or randomization to keep things fresh on subsequent playthroughs. That said, a single complete playthrough offers a solid 20 to 30 hours of engaging content, which is respectable for this type of game. If we're being honest about weaknesses, the game can feel repetitive in its middle section. The loop of explore, gather, craft, repeat is inherently repetitive, and Forever Skies doesn't quite do enough to break up that pattern. More variety in objectives or unexpected events would help. The story, while interesting when you find it, is maybe too hands-off for some players. If you don't engage with the environmental storytelling, you might feel like nothing is happening narratively. But those criticisms feel minor compared to what the game gets right. In 2026, Forever Skies stands as a genuinely unique survival experience that still offers something you can't quite get anywhere else. It's not trying to compete with massive open-world games or AAA productions. It carved out its own niche and executed that vision with confidence. For players who want a more contemplative, exploration-focused survival game with a killer aesthetic and solid mechanics, this absolutely delivers. My rating sits comfortably at 4 out of 5. Forever Skies is an excellent game that does what it sets out to do extremely well. It's not perfect and it won't appeal to everyone, but for its target audience, it's a must-play experience that holds up years after its initial release. The fact that we're still talking about this game in 2026 proves it did something right. If you haven't experienced Forever Skies yet, it's absolutely worth your time, especially now that it's fully released and polished. If you enjoyed it back in the day, maybe it's time for another playthrough. Either way, hit that like button if this review helped you out, subscribe for more deep dives into games old and new, and drop a comment letting me know what classic game you want covered next. Share this with anyone still sleeping on Forever Skies. Thanks for watching.